Welcome to the Blissful Biz podcast. I'm your host, Susanne Reicher, and today I'm talking to April Roberts, founder of the Vixen Gathering. April helps Generation X women achieve more abundance, love, spirituality, and alignment by connecting with their femininity. In our conversation, April shares her journey and how she found her calling in coaching and mentoring female entrepreneurs. We explore the challenges of work-life balance, setting boundaries, and the evolution of online business from the early days to the present. I'm so honored to have had April on the show, and I can't wait for you to meet her, so let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Blissful Biz podcast, the show where we dive deep into the world of online businesses while navigating hot flashes and menopausal brain fog, to name just a few symptoms of being an entrepreneur in your midlife. I'm your host, Susanne Reicher, and I help coaches and service providers like you who want to build a blissful online business in their 40s, 50s, or 60s with a clear message, an aligned offer suite, and marketing strategies rooted in the heart. April, welcome to the Blissful Biz podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Hi, Susan. Thank you so much. First of all, I love the name of your podcast, Blissful Biz. That's what it should be for all of us.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was so lucky that it was available. I'm really happy with that name too. So let's start. Could you introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure. So I'm April Roberts, and I'm the founder of the Vixen Gathering, which is actually a company where we do business consulting, mainly for Gen X women. So, I kind of say early 40s to like mid 60s is our typical client. And so, I've always been in masterminds and had coaches myself as an entrepreneur since 2012, but it was I've never been in one led by a woman. And two, Susan, I think you and I can agree the conversation's different when it's a room full of women versus, mixed sex, mixed gender, right? Like there's just different topics. And so I really wanted to create that environment so it was a safe, supportive space, because I think all of us who are entrepreneurs, especially at this point in our life, would agree that it can be a lonely endeavor. So not just helping my clients grow their business, but giving them a community of other women, at the same stage of life and the same circumstances, so that we have a safe space to discuss. So the interesting thing is this is my fourth career. So I bring a lot of varied skill set to the table, which we can dig in. And in 2020, I just got called to do something different than my financial advisory practice, which I sold last year, and focus full time on coaching, mentoring, and consulting Gen X female entrepreneurs.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story and background. Do you have a corporate background too, then, like as your first career, or what did you do?
My first career was a corporate litigator in a very large law firm in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah. So at the time, we had 800 attorneys. I think that firm now, literally has thousands. So we had 4 offices back then, and I think they have something like 20 offices around the world now. So yes, I do say I have a corporate background because our law firm had a CEO, had a board. It was very much run like a corporation.
Yeah, I just use that expression as well sometimes to describe what I've done. I've been working in advertising.
Oh, yeah.
And which, interestingly, is probably maybe a little similar to working like in law office. There are no boundaries when it comes to working for your clients. I was very good at my job because I'm such a people pleaser. And I did everything to make them happy. And their deadlines, they were just like, right? Like children would die in Africa if we wouldn't keep that deadline. It was crazy. So yeah, that's why I was really interested also to talk more about boundaries in your business, what you experience, how you coach there, and how you got there as well.
Yeah. I love that. And we do have similar backgrounds. So I graduated law school in 2001 and started in the law firm. And, I was 25 years old and they were paying me six figures, which was a heck of a lot of money back then. Right. And so, yes, I had this great life, beautiful apartment, convertible Mercedes. That's when you're 25, what you think a great life is. Right. Lots of friends.
Yeah.
But I ate dinner at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. Like Saturday, most of the day was spent at the office. And, I remember one time, 2 o'clock in the morning, like bribing the team I was working on to stay another hour by like ordering us pizza. I don't know how I got us pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning, but like, yeah, you just like, I don't know, you're just like, oh, this is how the world works. Right. And I think also, most of us had baby boomer parents, and that was kind of inbred into our head that if you have opportunity, you take it, you do what you have to, you work. And so that was kind of normal. And to answer your question, Susan, I saw the first glimpses of this isn't really normal when I lived in Atlanta and I had friends from college in Atlanta too. So if I ever mixed my lawyer friends with my non-lawyer friends, I just saw them looking at us like we had two heads, right? Like, what is wrong with you people? Like, this isn't normal. So I saw glimpses, but you're kind of caught up in the lifestyle. Everyone around you is doing the same thing. And if you're not there when your client calls on Friday afternoon at 4, that you're going to get in trouble. So I very much I like to say grew up in that environment. And to be honest, it was challenging for me when I then had my own team, because I had to learn how to adjust my expectations for my team,
Oh,
because that
interesting.
was the
Yes.
world I grew up in, right? So, and and I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfathers both, passed away millionaires, and they had a sixth grade education, and a high school education with military. And they were a paint contractor and a contractor. So in my family, that's just what you did. You worked. I remember being in high school working at my grandfather's cleaners thinking, wow, why don't people want the extra hours? They get paid more. Like that was just my mentality, right? I didn't think maybe they want to have dinner with their family or maybe they want to do this.
So how did you escape? I don't really, yeah, it doesn't
I
have to
like
be an
it.
escape, but how did you
So,
start as an entrepreneur?
well, first and foremost, I left my legal career because I fell in love. So I think a lot of times, I was engaged, getting married. And when you see and my ex-husband was Italian and had moved to the US to be with me, going through the struggle of trying to find a job, not being a US citizen was very difficult, getting him his green card, etc. And so, when you start seeing how your schedule affects other people in your life that you care about, I think that's when you start saying, okay, something's not normal here. So that's a whole nother story of how we moved to Italy and everything. But I went through that and I kind of realized, okay, when I emailed the partner at 3 a.m. in the morning, it's okay because I'm a 26-year-old associate. But when this, 50-year-old partner is emailing me back at 3 in the morning, is that really the life I want when I'm 50 years old? So again, I had these glimpses and life just kind of changed for me, getting married, moving to Italy. And so I'd like to say I magically left those habits behind. But as I said, when I started my own business in 2008, it's because I was going through a divorce. And, I'm sure like me, you were very driven. It was always like, what's next? What's next? And you're suddenly stopped in your tracks and you're like, okay, for the first time in my life, I don't know what's next. And so I looked to what my dad was doing and helped him. And it was in the retirement planning business. And so I was like, hey, Dad, in my spare time, I'll help you out. I was still practicing law. I don't know, I had a curiosity. And so I would like work with him at night and do my law job by day. And then I just realized, wow, my dad's actually planning for people's futures. Like he's making a huge impact in their lives. Whereas, I'm defending corporations or government entities. Like I'm not I don't know. I guess the best way to explain it is my soul was calling me to do a different type of work, right? Where I impacted people more directly. And so I made that jump and became a financial advisor in 2008 of all years. But I quickly
Wow,
fell in
very
love because,
different. Yes. I mean, like,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
very different because all those tools that we have today that make running an online business were so easy
Yeah.
comparatively, right? I mean, people might complain about that, but I'm like always telling them, you have no idea what it was like.
Yes. I know.
So, yeah, I started my first online business in 2011. It was a yoga
Oh,
retreat
wow.
directory. It was sort of like a little hobby. And
Yeah.
I had so much fun. I would set up like a WordPress website and
That's
and
amazing.
MailChimp email list. And I just like, yeah, just started. It was fun.
It was so funny. Actually, now that you mention it, when I joined my dad in 2008, I joked that I was his intern for a year and a half, but like I kind of did everything in the business he didn't do. And he didn't have a website. So just getting
Mm,
us a website was such an ordeal back then, right? Like
yeah.
figuring out like, okay, who can I hire to do this? How do we get pictures? Like what do we need on the website? Yeah, that was one of my first jobs when I switched over, but I agree. So online, I really switched to 2020, our financial practice. We were still meeting with everyone face to face until COVID hit. And then suddenly, obviously, we had to go remote. And then when we came back, it was hybrid. At first it kind of changed. Like everyone was online, then it was like 50-50 in the office online. And then it got to where 70% were coming into the office because most of our clients were retired. I think they were just bored and wanted to get out of the house, to be honest. But I'm grateful for that because, I started the Vixen Gathering as a side gig around the same time. So I already had that experience with Zooms. I had a TV show in 2020. And so suddenly you're recording your TV show via Zoom. You don't go into the studio anymore, right? So when we think about it, like in many ways 2020 was terrible, but in many ways it was a blessing because we changed the way we were doing a lot of things.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I work with a lot of yoga teachers. We have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of yoga teachers listening, and I'm so proud of them. So many, not only my clients, like all those yoga teachers really embrace showing up for their
Yeah.
audience online, teaching on Zoom, figuring those things, out after, like they have never used those things before.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been such a learning curve since then. And the amazing thing is, I think that's the silver lining of all those, tough years with the pandemic, is that the world of online learning has opened up so much. I mean, it was already predicted to
Yes.
grow exponentially before the pandemic. But in the pandemic, so many more people realized, oh my God, it's like this vault of information online. I can learn pretty much everything there. And so now today, obviously, we have a lot more noise, right?
Yeah.
We have a lot more people trying to do something online, a lot more online coaches, life coaches, yoga teachers who teach yoga online, all kind of service providers. There's also a lot more interest though, but it
Mm-hmm.
can feel really hard, I feel, especially for people just getting started. They might worry that they are too late to the game, which I say is like ridiculous because it's still like in its infancy, the industry.
I agree.
And and they might struggle with overwhelm, but also when they are already successful, just trying to navigate this online business world, trying to keep their clients happy, trying to
Mm-hmm.
keep the marketing going, all the things, how it is.
Yeah.
So do
Yeah.
you help? What do you do there? You work with clients too, mainly one-on-one, or how does it look like?
Oh, great question. So I actually currently have three programs. One is for aspiring entrepreneurs, women who are still in corporate with a side gig that they would like to move to, and also startups. So the purpose of that program, it's a 12-week intensive, is kind of helping them get the habits in place. Like we're talking about boundaries today. If you're juggling all these things, what boundaries do you need in place so that you can protect your time, energy, and confidence, because you need that for your business, right? So that 12-week intensive is very like focused on that and accountability and how to set good goals. Because Susan, one thing, as you were talking, I was thinking about shiny object syndrome, which is like, ooh, I could do this, and ooh, I could do this, and ooh, I could do this. And usually, if you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, you have shiny object syndrome. And that's why you own your own business, because you want to do it your way, right? And you want the freedom. So I think setting good goals can set boundaries, protect you from that. Because, I know this quarter, here's the 3 things I'm focused on. So if I get an email from you offering something, and if I get an email from another coach offering something, okay, well, which ones are aligned with my goals right now? And I have a folder in my inbox that says this quarter research. And then I drop them there and I delete all the others, right? Because I don't want to be distracted from my goals. So that's really important. And even my next program, which is helping women go from 6 figures to 7 and providing that community again. The first one's a small group coaching. The second one is a mastermind program where we come together for retreats and then have virtual meetings in between. The same thing, like that goal setting, flex muscle, setting boundaries, time management, time boundaries. It really takes a long time to flex that muscle and get good at it. It is, I know there's a lot of talk about boundaries, and I like to talk about graceful boundaries, but it's a skill set, and we have not been taught the skill set. I think you'd agree, especially we women, because we're used to serving others, taking care of everyone. And so that boundaries. So, and then my third program is the Jet Setter Mastermind, which is for women doing 7 or 8 figures who have a team, because that brings its own set of challenges, right? Like, how are you showing up as a leader? How are you protecting your energy, yet serving your team and your clients? Because at that point, it's not just your clients, but it's the people whose livelihood depends on you as well. So I have those programs, and I will work one-to-one with people. That's a higher ticket price, because as we're talking about leveraging your time, like it's not the best leverage of my time and resources to work one-on-one with someone.
I love it. Thanks for lining that out. Sounds amazing. Like really well thought out offers. I'm sure that's not where you started, right? So if somebody is listening, but I'm just getting started, don't try to do everything at once.
No. And when I started, we only had the mid-tier, the mastermind, and I really focused on that. And now, that's well developed. And what happened was I kept having people come to me that were startup, but they have different problems than that tier, right? So I didn't feel I could serve them by allowing them into that group. Plus, I wanted to create something more, I call it, I don't want to say more affordable, but more cash flow friendly, because when you're first starting a business, you should be conscious of your cash flow, right? And what you're paying for and where your resources are going. And so that's really how that bottom program came about, because I had a lot of requests. So I just thought, okay, what can we do that can serve these, potential clients best? And then same thing with the upper level. I have a podcast as well. And I had women reaching out to me that are running national law firms because they relate to my, law career and different things. And so I was like, okay, well, what kind of community do we need to create for here? So I agree. That was actually, we just had our quarterly meeting, and my COO was so excited because she's like, I feel like we finally have clarity on what we offer, right? But it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, I think we have to embrace that it's always going to be shifting and pivoting, and not, like we're always going to evolve in our business and as our person. Sometimes it feels like, sometimes people get stuck in that strategy phase where they feel they have to have everything perfectly figured out, and the website in place and the logo and everything before they can even start talking about anything.
Well, and the challenge with that, I mean, I'm sure, Susan, I know we've updated our website. In fact, we're totally rebuilding it right now, is you don't know what your client needs and wants yet. Like there's no way you haven't, especially in what I do and the same for what you do, as we coach our clients and as we work with them, we understand deeper what they really need and want. And so in my opinion, you have to outmarket and outserve everybody to exist in today's world. And like I think for most, for you and I and most of your listeners, we're driven by serving people. So that outserve is not a problem. We just have to figure out how to do it best. And so if you
Yes.
think you can get all of that correct before you actually have clients, I just feel like you're setting yourself up for disappointment because it's almost impossible because you don't really know what they need and want yet until you start serving them.
Yes, definitely. 100% agree. Let's talk a little bit more about working with your clients, because this
Sounds
is
good.
also like where a lot of people suddenly run into challenges, right? So it's like, ooh, I thought it would be easier. Or it's like, oh my God, I'm over, but there's just too many people want something from me. Or,
Yeah.
and you get annoyed or resentful. So,
Yeah.
can you share a few like examples and solutions for people? Like what kind of problems you've seen people have most often or run into and how to handle that?
Totally. So again, there's not a lot of talk in our generation about boundaries. I think younger generations talk about it a little bit more than we did. But I heard you use the term resentful. And anytime you're feeling resentful, that's a great red flag that someone's violating a boundary, right? So to handle it, I think you have to get to the heart of the problem, right? Like what's being violated, because I like to say we go into mama bear mode when we need to protect our boundaries because we're actually protecting something important to us, right? That's why we feel resentful, because something needs to be protected. So we can protect, as we talked about, our time, energy, and confidence, which probably is being violated if you feel resentful to clients. You can also protect your goals, your core values and belief systems, and you can protect the people around you. So you can protect your clients, you can protect your team, you can protect your family, right? So if you feel resentment, really start thinking, okay, where's this coming from? And what is it that I want to protect, right? Because then we get into our why instead of our how. And so we have purpose behind it because if you're not used to having difficult conversations, we can all agree they feel icky, right? For lack of a better term, like it's painful to have
Yes,
a
especially
difficult
with
conversation.
clients where
Yes.
it's, you're more like friends and everything is so
Yeah.
feminine, lovey-dovey, and spiritually enhanced.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have to tell people, no, sorry, this is not going to work this way.
Yeah. And so I think when you feel resentful, start understanding what's not working, what you need to protect. And, unfortunately, you're going to have that difficult situation. But, I like to talk about setting graceful boundaries. And that's just really a boundary that you feel good about. And that is a win win for both parties. So I like to say, do your work before having the conversation, really get down to what is being violated and what you need to protect. And then you're not going to feel good about having the conversation. It's fear. So, especially a lot of your listeners are yoga instructors, they understand this. So, what are you going to do with your mind to get rid of the fear? How are you going to get it out of your body physically? Like, really do some work before having that conversation. I think people get triggered and jump into this conversation at the wrong time. If you're triggered, not a time to have the conversation, right?
You always
Maybe,
wait before you reply, at least a day.
yeah,
When you reply, yeah, when you get like a difficult email, I would
yeah,
always wait for a day. But I think it's also your job, though, to set the boundaries in
agreed.
advance, right? And I mean, sometimes we just haven't done that perfectly, and that's fine. You just like have to change it moving forward
Yep.
and tell people what your boundaries are. Like, for example, that you're not going to reply on the weekend to urgent
Yeah.
requests or things like that.
I agree. And that's my point in reflecting, like, because you might have to have that conversation then, but what guardrails can you put into place for going forward, right? Because if you set kind of, we can call it a scope of work, but whatever you want to call it, if you set with your clients, here's how we work together, you're also giving them confidence of, hey, Susan's not going to disappear once I hire her. And at the same time, you're setting that boundary for when you're available. So if we start thinking about it as creating a win-win situation, that becomes a lot easier to do that ahead of time. And we were talking about how right now, what were you calling it? Asynchronous support, so we use Slack with my clients right now. We're figuring out if we go to a different community system, but I basically tell them, hey, from 9 to 4, Monday through Thursday, you're going to get a pretty immediate response from me, because the whole point is that I can coach you real time. So you're not, spinning for a couple of days. But outside of that, like you probably won't hear from me till Monday. And it's kind of easy for me because a big part of what I coach is boundaries and time management. So I have to practice what I preach. So I'm basically helping my clients set the same boundaries, right?
Yes. I love that. I do that too. So for example, I only have calls on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays.
Same.
So I don't have calls on Mondays and Fridays. So I have more flexibility in my calendar on those days. And when I have calls, because my clients are really, some of them are in the US, some of them are in Europe, some of them are in Australia. So it's really from early, it used to be really from early morning until late at night. I got more restrictive there. I'm not doing calls before 10 a.m. my time, but sometimes I
I
have
love it.
calls like at 8 p.m. But that's fine. I don't have kids, so I don't, that's just like works for me. Everybody has a different lifestyle, so you have to figure out what works for you. And yeah, so with the support options, I'm just like pivoting there. I feel like we're not in the same situation anymore where we've been in the pandemic, where everybody was spending all day long in front of their computer. Everybody's
Yeah.
outside, everybody's more busy, which is amazing, obviously. Not so good for online coaches, but yeah, it is what it is. No, it's a good thing. And I see that when I run group programs where live calls are included, that the attendance rate is much lower than what it used to be like.
Yes.
Which obviously I'm the same. So I'm not blaming anybody for that, but I was like really rethinking what makes most sense for people. Do we really need those Zoom calls, Zoom group calls that go on for hours? Who has time for that, really, to do that all the time? It's nice sometimes to have the community, to meet everybody, but I switched things up, that I'm now offering, instead of monthly one-on-one calls, just like a quarterly one-on-one, and then Voxer
Mhm.
support Tuesday to Thursdays. And I'm very clear with my boundaries there, so people can know, yeah, it's only those days that they can
Yeah.
expect a response.
Well, and I love that. And I think you have to know your audience, like who your client is and what they need. So, for example, honestly, my first tier program, which is the least, let's say the most cash friendly option I have, they actually get more of my time because they need more of my time, right? Like accountability is so important, goal setting. And it's structured differently for the upper tier because they don't have time and they don't need me all the
Mm-hmm.
time. So it's more like, okay, how do I bring the most value when we are together? Right. So you have to really understand your audience and what they need and what their life looks like. Do they have time to be on those calls, or are you setting up for failure? And then I think you want to optimize your systems. So, for example, our 12-week coaching, the minute you pay and get your welcome email and client survey, like you get a calendar invite for all 12 sessions in our homework session, right? So, how do you make it easy so it immediately goes on their calendar and they know, okay, I'm accountable to show up at this time?
Oh, I love that. Yes. I love that. I use School. I don't know if you've ever heard about that program for my membership. And I love it that the calendar is integrated really well in the platform. So people have the community, which looks a little bit like a Facebook group feed. And then on the top, they can see like upcoming, like workshop is coming up in 3 days or workshop is coming up in 1 hour. And then you have the classroom and an extra tab. So it's all in one place. And
I
people get
like it.
notifications on their phone as well.
Yeah.
So they can sign up like or get like a weekly email with what's been happening. So I love that because I think this also works for people that they don't feel they have to actively go in there all the time,
Mhm.
but they get the reminder to log in to check out what's been going on, and then they just look at everything and yeah.
Yeah, I love it. No, most of our programs are still live. We just leverage through groups. So I am actually currently looking at different communities like School to decide what our next step is. So
Mm.
thanks for sharing that. I'm definitely checking it out. I see a lot of people have been speaking highly about School lately.
Yeah, I've sent you the link. You can definitely check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's like really booming right now. It still has a lot of features missing, so it's not perfect.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking about overwhelm earlier with clients. What I run into and I like, Susan, I think we're very similar in who we serve, but the reason I wanted to serve Gen X women is there's something if you study life cycles where like age 37 to 42 is when women start saying, okay, I've done the family, I've had the career, success. What else is there? Like, what is there for me? And they start wanting to fill their cup or go deeper spiritually or find what else is there. And so, I feel like a lot of women we work with are transitioning out of being there for everyone, like and then trying to figure out, okay, how do I make space for me? And I think that leads to the overwhelm. Throw in running a business on top of that, and you have a lot of priorities in the air. But I think a lot of women don't think to set boundaries at home as well. Like I have a new client who's a CPA starting a fractional CFO business. And, she has a husband and a 14-year-old son that are used to mom being there and cooking and providing meals all the time. And she still has her 9 to 5 corporate job, which is pretty intense. And she doesn't have the time. And I'm like, okay, I need you for the next week to write down everything that annoys you, put it in your notes section of your phone, and we're going to start getting rid of the energy sucks because can she delegate to her son to be in charge of helping with meals? Like, can her husband start helping? Right? Like, when your life changes, it's almost like you have to renegotiate these social contracts that we have with people in our lives, right? It might be that your mom's used to talking to you on the phone every day, and suddenly you have to schedule that time with your mom. I've had to do that in my life because I want my mom to have confidence she's going to talk to me, but I don't have time in the middle of the day to speak with her, right? So, I love boundaries at work and guarding your time, energy, and confidence, but we got to think about where we maybe need them in our personal life too, to protect ourselves and our business and our goals.
Yes, I love that. That is so important. And
Yeah,
I have so much respect for women who do it all. Like also, I
I
don't have
know.
children. I just have that
Me
crazy
neither.
dog. So she's my baby. But I also don't want to work 60 hours a week
Yeah.
anymore for my business. So I'm happy with just like 5, 6 hours a day. And that's like
Mhm.
really focused work time.
Yeah.
So
Well, and let's be honest, like, we're not like I was when I was 25 and I could work 80 hours a week and still go out with my friends and travel and do all this stuff. Like, I just want more peaceful time. I want more rest. I want to take care of myself better. And so, absolutely, there's many reasons you probably want to guard
yeah.
your time. I personally wake up like before 5 a.m. So I joke with my
Ooh.
clients, like, if you meet with me after 4, the brain is gone. Like, you're not getting any value. By putting time boundaries in, you're also setting yourself up for success to show up at your best instead of people getting what's left of you at that point in time.
Yes, and everybody's different there. You really have to know what works for you.
Yes.
right? I think boundaries are so important, especially when you're just getting started. I always tell my clients, really set your time blocks and decide in advance how long you want to spend on a task,
Yes.
because it's so easy to take so much longer than needed. When we're just getting started, the only thing we have is time.
Yes.
So when they start like fiddling around on that thing or take like 3 hours to create a social media post, which is like, oh my God, don't do that.
Well, yeah.
Don't do
And,
that. So
no, I agree. And no one talks about energy. You also have X amount of energy, like time and energy are your main resources, right? So, not just time blocking, but in what order are you doing things? Because if you do something that's really frustrating or difficult, and then you have to, you and I coach, and then let's say I did something difficult, and then I hop on a coaching call with a client, what's my coaching client getting, right? Like I haven't set my calendar structure up for success. So I'm very similar to you. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm super focused. Monday spent with my team and preparing for the week. And Friday, I leave loose for all that stuff that you can't take care of during the week. And if I'm caught up, great. Like I have some time for my spiritual work, or I go for a 2 hour hike, or I do something to take care of myself. Because we just don't, I don't know what's happened, but we don't live in a world where everything can get taken care of over the weekend like we used to. Or maybe it's that we have different interests.
yeah, no, I tried. I'm getting better at not working on the weekends. I'm not so strict about it because I live
Yeah.
alone. So, and when it's raining, why shouldn't I work? Right?
Yeah.
And when it's like really nice weather on a Wednesday afternoon and I want to go for a longer hike with my dog, I do that. Or just read a book on the so so I allow myself more flexibility, but I also think I want to get a little bit back to be a little bit stricter about the schedule and to protect my free time more, because it's easy then, because I love what I'm doing. It's easy to get overexcited about things, and then and we can get burned out from things that we love doing just as well as
Mm-hmm.
from things that we don't love doing. So
Well, and
you
I
need
think
to,
it's important. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
no,
Susan.
it's okay. Go ahead.
I think it's important to understand there are seasons to everything, right? Like, let's say you're launching a new program, you might need your Saturdays that it's your only time that you're really free to think and be creative, right? And there may be work you want to do. And then after the launch, you take your Saturdays back for personal time. So I really think it's important to look at things like in quarters and months, like, hey, what's going on this month? Or, and when I color code my calendar, I'll have time in there for fun time, spirituality, all the things I know that fill my cup. And so if I see like, ooh, I haven't had a lot of fun time for a couple of weeks. Okay, next week I need to plan in a lot of fun or April's going to burn out. So
Oh, I
let's
love how
like
you're doing that. I
balance
never
it.
really color coded anything in my calendar. Tell us more
Oh,
about that.
yes. Yes, I love it because then, like what you're talking about, Susan, then you can run your calendar based on a rhythm, right? Because at a glance, you get a feel for what you're doing that week. Because even my business has 4 different shades of green. So green, Vixen is green on my calendar, but time with my team is one color, time with my clients is another color. Time like this, where I'm, I call this an event where I'm speaking or guesting on something like promoting the business or having a chat. And then, the time on the calendar for having like sales conversations with potential clients is different because these are all different energies that we use. And so if you have to go from leading the team to coaching to hopping on a sales call to hopping on a podcast, you've just exhausted and depleted yourself. But today is Thursday. I have my own podcast. So I have 5 podcasts today. I'm here chatting with you, and then I'm recording 4 of my own. And this is all I'm doing. And when I finish at 3, I'm going to go to the park and walk because I need it. Like,
I love that. I have to try that too. What kind of fun activities do you put in your calendar?
I love it. So here's what I do and I coach for. So again, I've broken out. I used to have like growth and spirituality the same colors. So this quarter I changed that. If it's a more mental growth, it's one color. So like getting skills for my business, learning how to do things, like that's blue. And my spirituality is purple because again, it's two different things. Like it's growth in different ways, right? And then same for exercising. I made it its own shade of purple because I feel taking care of ourselves as part of spirituality. But, I haven't been doing a good job at it. So I want to look at my calendar and make sure that I have scheduled time to move my body. And then pink is my favorite color, like a fuchsia pink. So pure joy is pink on my calendar. And so when I say fun, that's what I mean. And, it could be reading a book one week out on my balcony. It could be taking a hike. This weekend, my niece is going to be in town for a conference. So I have time allotted to spend with her during her breaks. Like that's my joy time. So really whatever brings you joy and helps you like recover and refill your cup. And so what I ask my clients to do at the beginning is you need one essence of joy on your calendar per week because it's really hard when you first start, right? If you're not used to doing it. And then you can increase that time. So let's say it's a week where you are launching something or you have a lot of coaching calls. You want to slip that joy in there so that you can recover and show up better.
I love that. I would probably put in like either a coffee date or
I love it.
Going for a delicious lunch. Yeah. But otherwise, no, I'm probably more, I have a lot of, just allow a lot of flexibility in my life. I don't things like going to the beach to my calendar. It just happens. So different. Well, that was really, really interesting. Thanks for sharing your insights. Is there anything else you wish I would have asked you?
Yeah, I think, just we're talking a lot about boundaries and overwhelm. And when you first start this, have a lot of grace with yourself because it is a skill you're learning. I mean, it's very much like a toddler learning to walk, right? You're going to fall down and not feel like you handled it well. So that's why that reflection time is so important. And how I like to coach to reflect is first celebrate your wins. Number one, you had the conversation or you set the boundaries. So, like, give yourself kudos. And what else did you think went well? And then the second thing is, okay, how could I improve next time? And then the third thing is, what are the next steps in this conversation? Like, has it been taken care of or do I need to do something else? Right. So, we talked about preparing ahead of time, but doing that reflection afterward and just some little tips. I call it the sandwich method. I think this is a known method, but anytime you have a difficult conversation, start positive. Then, hey, I really feel like you're needing too much of my time. Can we chat about that? And then discuss, have your bullet points prepared so you don't stumble. And then, sandwich it with something positive. Okay, this is great. We both want this to work out. What are the positive steps we're going to take? So if together you can own the outcome, which sometimes if it's you and a client, that doesn't work because you might just have to set the boundaries or vice versa, but just do it in a positive way. And the other thing is I like to have bicycle language. So you mentioned if you get like an annoying email or one that upsets you and you take 24 hours to respond, like just have a thanks so much. I've received your email. My calendar's full today. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. That way, like just have that templated language you put in so that person feels seen and heard and they're not spinning and what they're upset with, but that buys your time to have the conversation. And my third tip would be like set yourself a deadline, right? Nobody wants to handle these things. No one wants to have this conversation, but the longer the delay, the longer your pain lasts. So, at first give yourself 48 hours. And as you get better, set that deadline within 24 hours to handle this situation. So that's just a couple of practical things. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for wrapping it up so clearly. I think that's really, really helpful. So thank you. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing so open and all your tips and advice. So, where can people go to learn more about you?
Awesome. So our website is vixengathering.com. So that's Vixen. Also, I have a podcast, The Vixen Voice. They can find on all the podcast channels. And I have a Facebook group called Abundant Business Women. So pretty easy to find. And, it's unique in that we're actually fostering conversation in the group. So just like today, you got these tips. I may go live one week and share these tips on boundaries. So it's really just encouraging women to have more of these conversations and to get better in all aspects of their lives.
Well, thank you so much. We'll add the links to the show notes. So, get in touch
Awesome.
with April, check out her podcast. And thanks so much for being here, April.
Thank you, Susan. I'm really honored that you had me, and it was such a lovely conversation.